we are constantly looking for ways to save time. There's so much that we need to get done within a day, and more often than not, we simply feel like 24 hours is just not enough. Now, Excel is a fantastic tool which makes our lives a lot easier. It also helps us to save a lot of time. There are so many different tips and tricks which we could use. So let's dive straight into this lesson of Excel and let's learn exactly how we can start saving our time by using many different functions. For this lesson, we have 3 main objectives. So first we'll start off by discussing exactly how we can use a Power Query tool. We'll also identify exactly how we can get data from the internet into Excel and make sure that data is live. And last but not least, we'll discover the quick analysis tool, which makes our lives a lot easier. But now just a little bit of a recap. Can you remember some of those shortcuts and what exactly they mean? So I'll show you a few of the shortcuts on the screen and let's see if you are right. Control O means that you'll be able to open an existing workbook. Control N means that you'll be able to create a new workbook. Control S is for saving. Control W is for closing a workbook. Now that one may be a little bit more tricky. And last but not least, Control P is made to print. Now that we know a few more shortcuts and your brains have started working, let's dive straight into our first topic of this lesson, get data. In this topic, we'll be importing all the data from the web into Excel. So we will be using the get data function from the web. And this function can be found in the group get and transform data. But now how exactly do we do this? As you can see, Excel is an excellent tool that allows us to connect from different data sources. So in other words, we'll be able to import information from many different websites straight into Excel. Now some of you may be thinking, why on earth would we like to import data into Excel? Well, most of the time, you're not really able to edit the information on the website itself. But once we transfer the data into Excel, we can apply all the conditional formatting or even create a pivot table in order for us to analyze information. And perhaps, we may also be able to apply some formulas, get graphs. There are so many different possibilities. But now how exactly do we do this? So first we'll start off by copying the URL. Then we'll go to the Get and Transform Data tab. Then we'll select From the Web. You need to paste the URL which you've copied from the website into the dialog box and click OK. From there, your navigator tool will show up. And sometimes we'll have to wait a few seconds while Excel detects the table from this page. And then once you've finished, you can go to your second tab, which is known as the Web View tab. So this is simply just to confirm that the information which we've copied is exactly from the website which we wanted. From there, we can go back to our first tab, which is the Table View, and find our table within this menu. You can scroll down to confirm that that is all the data you want. And then once you're happy, click on the Transform Data button at the bottom of our window. But remember, you can always eliminate or include additional information. Once we're happy with all our information, we press the button Load, and we can choose Load from the drop-down list. Otherwise, you can import into a new data sheet or the existing one. Once you're happy, press Import Data and click OK. But how about we pop straight over to Excel and see this in action? So first and foremost, we want to start with a brand new workbook. So we'll open New Workbook. Can you remember the shortcut for that? If you say Control N, you are correct. And now we need to find our data. Remember we said we're going to copy this data from a URL. So therefore, we go over to the websites. Today we'll be using Google Finance. And let's say we'll use Tesla for our example. So we want to find all the data which we can about the stocks about Tesla. So if you scroll down, you can see we're quite happy. This is all the information. But specifically for today's lesson, we want the historical data. The historical data opens up in a table form. If you scroll down, you can see all the historical data which is there for Tesla. So we would like to import all of this information into our Excel spreadsheet. So remember we set off by starting copying that URL. You can simply do this by pressing Ctrl C. From there, we go back over to our workbook. Make sure that you selected a cell because this is where you'll place your data. From there, we go over to our data tab in our ribbon, and in the Get and Transform Data area, we can see our option From Web. We click on From Web. A new dialog box will appear, and here you can once again press Ctrl V into the dialog box which has appeared on the screen. Simply click OK. Now remember, this may take a little bit of time because it's extracting all the information from the web page. If it says connecting, just be patient. Once the data has loaded, then you'll see a new dialog box which appears, which is known as your navigator. Remember, once again, you may need to wait a few seconds. Here you will have the web view. So remember, this shows us exactly what the website looked like, and here's our table. But just to make sure, we can go back over to table view and make sure that it's exactly the same and it's got all the information which we'd like. Once you're satisfied, click on load. You can say load to, and for today we're going to be choosing the existing worksheet and pressing OK. We also have another option. We do have the transform data option too, but we'll be looking at that in just a moment, so not just yet. So now we have our data which appears on the screen. It creates a content query to the page too. This you can see on the right-hand side of your window. Here we can see all the information. The information shows us exactly how many rows were loaded. And if we move our mouse over this data, we can see when it was last updated and the data source, and if our data is connected to. Now, of course, we need to make sure here that our data is connected to Yahoo Finance. So now remember that the great part of this tool is that if we refresh our information, it will show us exactly the latest and the most updated information. So here we have the option at the top, Refresh. You can see there's a shortcut too. You can also press Alt F5. Alternatively, you can right-click on your table and click on the Refresh button there too. Each and every time it's going to refresh. But now you may have noticed, here on our ribbon in Refresh, there is a down arrow. If we click on this down arrow, then we can go to the connection properties. In our connection properties, we have many different options where we can change different things about the table. So remember, you can also change the name. So let's say, for example, we're going to enter the name as stock prices. You can also change exactly when you'd like the refresh to happen. So you can enable background refresh, or you can have it refresh every 60 minutes. Or, if you don't want your data to be refreshed so often, you're more than welcome to refresh it only when you open the file. Once you're satisfied with when you feel like the information needs to be updated, you can simply click OK. And if we hover our mouse over it once again, we can see that it was just updated. But now this brings us to our second example. So let's say you would like to import the weather forecast for the next 10 days. So let's imagine that we're working for a luxurious hotel in Ibiza, and one of your co-workers has asked you for a little bit of help. He keeps coming to you all the time to ask you for the weather forecast for the next 10 days. Now this has become a routine activity, as this is the most common request among the tourists who are visiting the hotel. So we've decided to help him out. Now, of course, you do not want to be printing the file for the forecast every single time someone asks for it. So there is a screen in the reception which no one is using. So you decide that you'd like to create an Excel file and import it from the website. And that way, it will automatically update. So here we have searched the Ibiza weather for the next 14 days. And you can see your graph which appears here on the screen. So now you can already see that the data is organized in a table. So it's nice and easy. Once again, we're going to copy the URL, selecting Ctrl C, and going back over to our Excel spreadsheet. When in Excel, we go over to our data, and again, we want to get it from the web. When your dialog box appears, Ctrl V allows that URL to be pasted into the dialog box. Once you're satisfied, click OK. Remember, it may take a little bit of time for that navigator tool to appear, so don't worry and be a little bit patient. Let's double check to make sure that it is from the website which we intended. Going over to Web View, we can see, yes, it is the next 14 days forecast for Ibiza. And we click over back to Table View, and we can see all the different pieces of information. But now, of course, we only want the weather forecast, as a tourist may not be so interested in the rest of the information. So this is where our Transform Data tab comes in handy. Click on Transform Data, and you will see the Power Query Editor appear. Now, once you are in this tab, you can select all the cells which you will not be using. Once you've selected them all, you can simply right-click and remove the columns. Here you are only provided with the information which you are looking for. And of course, the most important part are the weather conditions. So that will move our column into our next slide. You also have the option of changing the title. So remember, as these are numbers, you may want to say to the clients that it is a high and the low. And here you also have your weather conditions. So once you're happy with all your information, you can press on Close and Load. Once you close and load, it will create it in a table. Now you can see that all your information is nice and clearly displayed. But now before we move on, I'd like to show you a little bit of an additional step. Now remember, some of the tourists may not be able to speak English so well, so it's a great idea to maybe add an emoji. So we can use the Windows emojis which are simply already loaded to Windows. You can do this with a keyboard shortcut, pressing on the Windows as well as full stop, and your emojis will appear. So for this example, let's say we want to have the word rain or sun when it's raining or when it's sunny. But let's start with rain firstly. So we'll choose our umbrella with raindrops because of course it will be raining. Once you've chosen your emoji, you can simply copy that emoji. So now that we want to edit our table again, you can click on the table and you'll see in the ribbon the query appears. When the query is here, you can go back to edit. And your Power Query Editor will appear once again. But now remember we want to add an additional column. So at the top of the ribbon, we have Add Column. This time we want a conditional column. This will allow us to set certain conditions to this column. So let's say if the weather conditions contains the word rain within it, then of course we can choose to have our little umbrella with the raindrops. Or let's say that our weather conditions contains the word showers, then once again it will have the umbrella. And there you'll see the little umbrella appear. Now once you're happy, go back home, close and load, and your information will create a whole new column showing the little rain umbrella when there is the word rain or showers within the weather conditions. So this makes it a lot easier. And remember, you can add sun and clouds and whatever you like to make this nice and interactive. But now if you have a look at the side, you can still see that it's called Table 0. So what we can do is go back to our Power Query. And once we edit it and we launch the screen, we can call it Ibiza Weather. And click OK. Once you close and load once again, you can see that the table name reappears. This will make it a lot easier for your colleague to find the table, and this means that they'll no longer be asking you every single day, a couple of times a day, for this information, as it's simply appearing on the screen. And remember, the most exciting part is it can be refreshed all the time, and you can select whether it be refreshed every 12 hours or 24. But now it's time for us to discover a whole new topic. For the second topic of this lesson, we'll be working with a Power Query in slightly more detail. But this time, we're going to imagine that we're not taking data from the website. Instead, your company has generated its very own data, or maybe this data was given to you by a colleague in a different situation. But you want to include everything which you can with using the Power Query Editor. Once again, as we said, there's only 24 hours in a day. Why not make our lives a lot easier? But how exactly would we use this? So the first thing we'd like to do is select any of the cells within the range of our data. And remember, we can always create a table. This can simply be done by using your shortcut Ctrl-T. Then we can click OK to confirm and a dialog box will pop up. This will be known as our table design dialog box. We can always change the name of our table into whatever you'd like it to be. And then we can go to the Data tab and Get and Transform Data. You can select the table or the range on the button. Select the Power Query and it will launch. You will see all your data appear there. And the name of the Power Query will be the one that you selected previously. In the field of Applied Steps, we have our first step, which is known as the source data. Now, in this case, it was simply generated in an Excel file. But now the great thing about using the Power Query is that every step is recorded. So if we add or remove columns, you will not need to do this in the future. Once you're happy with all your information, click on Close and Load To, and all the data will appear in your Excel spreadsheet. So let's pop straight back over to Excel and see this happen in action. So here we have a sales report of all the different cars in Canada. Now we can see the model of the car, the sales per month, the category, and the year all the way from 2019 to 2021. As you scroll all the way down, you'll be able to see that this is a lot of information. Now we need to start making a few assumptions. So the first thing we need to do is create our table. So as we said before, simply select all your information and press Ctrl-T. Once you've done that, you will see a table appear. You can also change the table within your table design. It also allows us to change our table name. So changing our table name, we're going to simply call it Car Sales. And that will enable us to simply identify our table nice and easily. So now remember, our aim here was to use the Power Query editor. So we'll go back over to Data and click Select our data from a table or a range. Once we've clicked on that, we'll see our Power Query editor appear on the screen and we have all of our information. Now, the great thing about the Power Query is that it allows us to make different changes. And on those applied steps, it records all of the data. So this is one of the main reasons to use this Power Query editor. So if we add or remove any columns, we do not need to do these steps in the future. Once you're happy, you can always click OK. So now it looks like the Power Query tool does not recognize any cells which don't have a value within them. So this means that we need to select on the month and we need to transform our data. So going to the third tab where it says transform, we can select on fill within any column. We can say fill down. Now, of course, we need to know exactly how it's going to fill. So we choose how it's going to fill by choosing replace values. Clicking on values, we can see that Excel has placed it with a dash. So we want to replace our dash with zeros. Once you're happy with that, you click OK. And now as we can scroll down, we can see every dash or an unreadable number has been replaced with a 0. And just remember, all of our steps have been recorded. So if we make any changes to this table, it will simply apply to any future steps. So once again, this makes life nice and easy and saves you a lot of time too. So we click OK, we go back to our table and we can see it has been replaced with zeros. And you can do this for all the different columns. And in the future, you won't need to do it again. But now that we know a little bit more about how exactly we can save our time by using the Power Query, let's have a look at quick analysis, as this may help us work faster too. So, quick analysis. This is easily done and otherwise known as analyzing through the different tables. Did you know that quick analysis is the easiest way to analyze your data? It helps you just have a quick review and see exactly what you're looking at. But how on earth do we use this tool? So first you'll start off by selecting your data, clicking on your quick analysis, which will appear at the bottom right, and then you'll select the visualization which you would like to use. But now let's have a look at this powerful tool in Excel. So here we have all the financial data on a spreadsheet for a certain business. Now, as we can see, there is so much information, and it may result us in becoming confused. We may get lost in looking at all the numbers and all the different ciphers of hundreds and thousands. But of course, we can always highlight a particular column and use a conditional formatting. This will help us to use different helpful visuals in order to understand the spreadsheet a little bit better. But in this topic, we're going to discuss an even quicker way to get very similar information. So first we'll need to start off by selecting all the data which we would like to analyze and produce different visualizations. Now we can do this by clicking and dragging down on all the information. But remember, today is all about efficiency, so that may take a lot of time as there is a lot of information. So this can simply be done by clicking on Control A, and this will simply select all your information. And it's a lot faster too. Now you may have noticed, when we selected all the information, on the lower right-hand side, you saw a little box appear. Now this is known as a quick analysis tool. The shortcut for this box is Control Q. Now the nice thing is that we don't have to go all the way to the lower part of the data in order to see this tool. It should pop up whenever you're at the bottom of your data, or at the top, or even in the middle. Please note, we have to select everything in order to use this tool. It won't simply appear if we don't have all the information selected. If you click on it, you will see there's many different visualizations. So first you can start off by using your formatting. If you move your mouse across the different formats, you can see different things appear. So whether it be greater than, top 10, or you can even clear all your information. Of course, the easiest way would be to use your data. Maybe your red is your highest and your green is your lowest. You could also use charts. So in your charts, it will show you all the different information which is displayed using the piece of information. Totals need to be done right at the bottom. Of course, totals won't be able to appear when you're in the middle of your sheet. So you can either get the sum of, the average, the count, the percentage of the total, the running, and many other options. We can also use our different tables, and this will summarize our information into a pivot table. And last but not least, we have our spark lines. So our spark lines will create another column on the side showing you the trend of the different piece of information. So if we have a look here, using our spark lines, we can see that either it started off flat and then made a peak, or vice versa. Now remember, there are so many different options. What works best for your information is going to be entirely up to the data which you are working with. So I'll encourage each and every one of you to go try use a quick analysis tool. And you'll start seeing a trend in which tables or spark lines or different colors may work for your data set. The more you practice, the better you're going to become. So this brings us to our lesson challenge. For this lesson challenge, I'd like you to choose a different company. Get all the information from the website, so you can always use Yahoo Finance once again. Import it in, include a different emoji, use the power tool, and use all the information which you have learned within this lesson. But this time, I'd like you to use the emoji of a bear for the highest numbers, an emoji of the bull for the lowest numbers. And finally, do not forget to set your time to refresh your data. I hope you have a lot of fun using all the information which we've learned in today's lesson. Until then, see you next time.